My name is Molly Anderson, and as Executive Director of the Atheneum, I would like to welcome you to probably the most anticipated outreach program of the week of our dance festival, and that's Tyler Engel's Behind the Curtain, in which he uses members of the dance festival company to demonstrate the program and performance that you're going to see on Friday and Saturday night. Through the generosity of many individual sponsors, as well as our corporate sponsors, Northern Trust, Tervis Tumbler, and Tradewind Aviation, we're able to raise much needed funds for the Atheneum so that we can provide more than 1,100 free programs throughout the year. And the kind of quality educational program that you're about to see is what we strive to do year-round on Nantucket. So please join me in welcoming Tyler and members of the Dance Festival Company. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Let me get my notebook, which until very recently was lost, my notebook, but some excellent people from the library, thank you, ran back and found it. I left it there at a talk that we were doing last night. And I'm very happy to have it. First of all, I'd like to introduce our wonderful musicians that we have this year. From left to right, we have Jeff Moore, Susan Walters, Paula Garcia, Jessica McJunkins, John Popham, and Jean-Ann Dara. Thanks so much for being here. It's always been a really amazing, and I'm sure all of you that have been to our festival shows before, it's incredible to have the live music element in such an intimate space, because not only does it add that other level of electricity, but also I think visually, physically, to see a bunch of kinetic movement coming from where the music is happening is also very, very interesting. All right, let's get right in. My first piece on the program, and I'll tell you now that the program that you get tomorrow is going to be incorrect. The order has changed because in watching things, I sort of decided that we needed a different kind of flow for the evening. And we are starting with something that was commissioned 2 years ago for this very festival. And I thought because it is the 10th anniversary and that the commissioning of new works has become important for the artists that have been invited here, and also I think for this community, I think that we've always gotten really excellent feedback from the new pieces that we've seen, that I wanted to open the program with a previous commission. So we're opening the program with something called Osso Duet, which was choreographed by Justin Peck for Patricia Delgado and Renan. How do you? Cerdeiro. So that's it. We'll get someone else to say it better in a bit. Which is a beautiful, beautiful duet. And I sort of spoke with Justin midway through the year about possibly doing a new project for this year, which he was unable to do. So we were working out sort of different ideas to still have, I think we're getting a little feedback, getting some of the work on the program. And I asked him if this duet had been performed anywhere else in the intervening years, and he said no. No one has ever seen this duet other than right here in this high school, and it's an amazing piece of work. So that's what I sort of want to start with. So if Trisha and Giovanni could come out on the stage. Thank you so much. Sorry, we're getting a little, okay. I sort of just want to do the very beginning, sort of like lightly waiting for the music, letting them sort of. Like here for that? So we'll just go from the top of Year of the Rat, not Year of the Rooster. Okay. Sorry, we're working on the little feedback. I think it's my mic and their mics. Can we just hear the first couple bars of this? Actually.
Sorry, they have
right. You have to say.
the
And how many bars is that until the
18 and 1 beat.
18 and 1 beat? Okay. So could we just do that again? Are you counting? Wait, but we didn't have that. Sorry, we didn't have the rest.
Are you talking about the big rest where we stopped before?
Yeah, no, we just because we were talking. We really want to. He wants to figure out how after the line to know how many. Maybe we should just count the number of pizzicato beats before that. Yeah,
So that would be 17 and 2 beats before the bubble.
So you guys come in to pick up to 18 or
Pick up to 90.
Pick up to 90.
Okay.
So,
We're just counting triplets.
so bar 18 is rest, bum, 90.
All right, we're gonna get it. So they're triplets. So let's do it from the beginning, and we'll count from the beginning. Yeah. And 1, 2, 3. We got it. So even when I was listening to this first, and I wasn't looking at the music, thank you, the triplet thing, that helped me. In the beginning, we were all counting these, we were going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of counting the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's try it one more time and then like really nail the exciting music. Because that's another thing about Justin too, and we'll talk more about the style because the last thing of his that we'll see on the program is actually the first ballet that he choreographed for the New York City Ballet, Increases. And there are a lot of things that I think now at this point in his career where he's done more work, we can see how his style has grown, but we also see all of the kernels of these kind of like original ideas, like where he was pushing the art form. And one of the things that he really loves is a change of direction. You know what I mean? A change of direction where your body just immediately, everything goes and everything stops at pieces. So let's try this again, and you're going to be perfect, I think. 1, 2, 3. And now watch how both of their rhythms break. Oh, sorry. Can we go from right there? Yeah. Right. Okay, sorry, 1 second. Can we go from like 2 bars from where you just started? So from where the violins come back in. Yeah. So this will be like right before that. Yeah. Yeah. And so we see from Giovanni's first line. Thank you. So this is something that we'll explore more in Increases too, but what you see right here, which is sort of like what they're doing in the whole pas de deux, playing with one another, is you see that Trisha comes in doing Giovanni's same line in a canon, breaks off into her own step for like 2 things, and then you see them complete the end of the step together. So it's like she's essentially catching up to, can you just do that without the music again? So he's starting his very first step that he did by himself. She joins together and stop. And then they fall and they go into the cello line again. Can you speak about when he is trying to get you to be specific with these movements? So if they're not specific with the way that they're doing these counting or with the dynamic, when things should be sharp, when things should be soft, it confuses the eye. And then this idea, which is clear, becomes convoluted. How does he try to explain this to you?
I think the music, just the way the music goes, it really tells a lot of how we're supposed to dance with our body, but the same way that confuses the eye of the audience. I think for our bodies, it's hard to go from something fast and then switch for something slow. But I guess it's in the music, and then we have to put it in our bodies as well. You, something to say?
One thing I love about working with Justin is he gives us really specific images to try to create, like this last pose that we do together. He told us it should be like striking a match. What was the other one he told us yesterday? Oh, we do a jeté lift across the stage, and he said he wanted it to look like I was throwing a dart. So it's just those kinds of things get me out of my head and like the technique of it and trying to make a visual.
I love that. Thank you for that. Because I don't know if anybody was at the talk that we did at the Atheneum last night. We spoke about how, 2 different ways, how either these physical impulses shaded a storyline, like, you know, how when someone's like moving their arms in Swan Lake, that actually helps the story along in the mood. But then also how in works like this that have no narrative line, having actually an idea, emotional story, otherwise, like a match or a dart actually help to shade the physical moments to make them more effective. Thank you very much. Awesome. And thank you for that. I'm sorry, in the beginning, that was like a little like pulling teeth, but sometimes it's hard to get, we speak different languages, dancers and musicians, for as sort of like tightly wound as it seems during the performances, sometimes it's difficult to communicate because we lack your terminology and you lack our terminology. So trying to bridge the gap, I think, is like a very important thing. And you witnessed that today. The second piece on our program I'm very excited about. It was choreographed by a friend and a sort of like a big influence. She's not someone that I'm super close with, but she has been a big influence of my life because she also worked very closely with one of my biggest mentors, Wendy Whalen. She's a Taiwanese dancer named Feng Yi Shu. If the cast of San, the name of this ballet is the number 3 in Chinese. San, I think is how it's pronounced. You can come into the light, you're sort of hidden. And this was sort of an interesting process for us because the bulk of the work was created in Taiwan, and through sort of like video notes and like a few instances of getting together, we sort of like created this new piece, which we're showing you at the festival. Another really interesting thing, actually I called you out early, but you can stand on the stage. I'd like for Paula and or John to speak about the music. After the first year that Paula came to the festival as the violinist, she wrote to me saying that she had a friend or an acquaintance or a colleague that had written a very beautiful piece of music that she thought was sort of in the vein that several of our young choreographers had been using. Music that actually, she said, inspired a lot of the younger generation of writers of this kind of lyric, modern chamber music. How would you describe it? But if you can talk about that for a second.
Sure. So John and I play in a trio, and we first played this piece by Rachel a couple of years ago for the Ecstatic Music Festival. Rachel Grimes. And it was the 20th anniversary of this piece, which is a 45-minute suite from which we're playing a few movements tomorrow and the day after. So yeah, I mean, it feels contemporary and it feels like today's language, but it did inspire a lot of composers that came after her, composers in the vein of like Bryce Dessner, Nico Muhly, and some of the composers that we played last year too, which is why, Ludwig Ellis, which is why I thought of this piece. And it had actually been written for, as incidental music for a theater and dance piece about the life of Egon Schiele, the Austrian painter. So I thought of that sort of like initial dance connection in the roots of the piece, and I thought about the type of music that you guys were programming here, and I was like, thought that you should, know about the piece and get to know and maybe love it. Rachel's one of the most beautiful, giving musicians I've ever met, and also performer herself. So she performed this music a lot as a pianist with her band that was called Rachel's. And they it was kind of proprietary. So it wasn't like written down. They just played it. It was their band's music, and for this concert that John and I did a couple of years ago, it was the first time that, she decided to actually publish the music and sort of give it a second life. We're super excited that it was chosen by Feng Yi, and
I mean, to say that I pushed sounds too aggressive, but I was definitely like, hey, I have this great music, take a listen. But she immediately loved it. She found the power in it, and she found that it was something that very easily went with dancing. And so now I want to talk with you all a little bit about, before we see anything, I want to talk to you about your impressions of her movement style. Because you each had 3 very different experiences with the choreographer. She wanted 3 very different things from each of our performers: Gina, Pascal Gwyn, Lane Habany, and my brother Jared Angle.
I'm starting it off. My experience, just watching this woman walk into the room, she is such a presence, and that's something that I was drawn to immediately as an artist, because I'm always trying to find new ways to be different, varying levels of presence on stage, and this particular ballet has taught me so much in how I can vary that. And she, what was the phrase she said? Yeah, they're amazing quotes. Leaving the tiger in the cage, Gina, and learning when to let the tiger out.
She, literally one day she jumped up from her chair and she said, "Gina, no, tiger's in the cage. Tiger comes out later." And she speaks in this very mysterious, she has a very deep, beautiful, beautiful voice. But when she's speaking to you, sometimes you're thinking, am I getting like secrets of the world? You're telling me things that are gonna change my life. I also have this note. She called me, and so we've been doing this also on like a 12-hour flip because she's in Taipei. And so she said, Gina, she said, "So powerful. We need to understand everything she is saying with her body." She said, "You can't shout loudly and have people understand. Think about speaking clearly, even if it's at a whisper, and then the message will come across." Which is something that the first day she said, Gina is like such a powerful performer. She was like, she just needs to like find herself and speak clearly. And then she would be like, and make sure she relaxes her eyebrows. Which is amazing. I mean, like it's like everything is under scrutiny with her. It's like she really sees everything and she'll just tell you immediately, like, no, that's what it is. Lane had an entirely different experience about what Fang Yi wanted.
Yeah, for me it was pretty much the opposite. Constantly telling me to open my eyes, because I guess I walk around with them shut. But yeah, like Tyler said, she was extremely honest and really, really specific with everything that she wanted, and she would let you know if you weren't doing it the right way. I don't know, I just thought it was...
And you as Lane is a relative, I'll just say maybe teenager compared with the rest of us on the stage. And so your experience working with choreographers is less than Jared's or Gina's. Had you ever been in a room with someone who was that forthright with you? And did it what was the process? How did you react to it in the beginning? Like, were you open in the beginning? Did it take some adjustment? Because when you're working in a place like the New York City Ballet, with the number of ballets that we do, and all of these people are members of that company, because of the workload, because of the number of dancers, we don't often get attention at all levels, we don't often get that much personalized, like under the microscope. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it was, at first I thought that I was prepared and open, ready for all that she had to say, but it was kind of like when she first started talking to me and kind of telling me what she expected and wanted, I was a little taken aback. I was kind of like, okay. I don't know, it was...
I'm sorry, did you have one more? No, I was going to say that after, there was definitely a rehearsal where there was a switch, and I remember talking with Jared about it, that like, you had sort of like gone home and processed, and you came back the next day, and were much more just like, okay, like, I'm hearing it, we're doing it again, and like, that it wasn't so much of an indictment as it was like trying to get something else out of you. She had a funny thing also, Jared, about you. This is an indictment. No, it's funny. Actually, no, it was... The funny thing that she was saying, she sort of was still laughing at herself the last time that we spoke on the phone, because, the ballet is a progression. It's a progression about either three people or three parts of one person or one person and shades of two others. I mean, this is all up to your interpretation, but we're definitely seeing a journey for three souls, as it were. And she had always expected that this piece was going to end with a solo for one of the women. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the process, she looked over at me and she said, "It has to be Jared." I said, "What has to be Jared?" She said, "The solo, it's Jared." And she said, "Because you were the only one." She was like, "Maybe you're the only real one. Maybe you are figments and that you're the only real," I don't know if she meant performer. I don't know if she was being complimentary. I'm sure she was. But can you speak about the last solo, which like we have a whole piece and a transition, and then the last solo becomes kind of very lyric and not something that you would maybe think of as a stereotypical male solo.
It definitely is more on the lyrical side of like the movement is very lyrical. But what I found interesting about her is when I sort of think of contemporary or more modern dance, I think of it as, for me, I just thought it would be like much less about a narrative and about a dramatic sort of thing, but she really wanted to pull out actual sort of theatrical drama in all of our movements, which I found really interesting. I thought it would be much more sort of like up to our own interpretation or something, but she really pulls out the drama, and the solo I think is pretty dramatic, and the music is really sort of poignant, and so she was very specific about movement and getting this drama, but at the same time sort of like very vague at the same time. So it's like you think you know what exactly she wants you to be, but then Tyler talks to her in Taipei, and then he gives us a rundown of each solo, and it's like it's either you're there or maybe you're not there. It's like, oh, come on, like, am I here? Am I not there? I guess it is all up to us to bring something to it, but she definitely wants it to be a theatrical, like we need to know who we are, even if we don't tell you or you come up with it yourselves. But at the beginning of the piece, she really wants us to like declare ourselves to you, and we sort of start the piece by just looking at you.
I think I'd like to do I think I'd like to go from Playful, please, in the first. That's our mark. The mark in the score is from Playful. No, that's after the first do-si-do, and it's your. But can we hear maybe 2 bars or 3 bars before that, before the rest? Thank you. Thank you. Just as an aside, we were also talking about the video I just sent her, and she said, "Why are they bouncing in those runs?" So there are these very difficult runs in the beginning. They don't look difficult, but she wants them to do-si-do, and she doesn't want a run where your head is bouncing. She wants the head never to move. But if you've ever tried to not move your head while running, you realize that you're doing it with it's like the most thigh-y activity you've ever done in your life. So we'll wait and see it in the show. I sort of would also like to do, what do I want to do? I want to do a little bit of Jared and Lane. If we can do like just the beginning of Jared and Lane. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gina. Because this was also one of those moments that was really amazing to have the live music. So we were working with a recording of Rachel playing this herself, and then when we got here with John and Paula and Susan, it was different. It was alive. They were making their own choices as musicians, and it ended up working really, really beautifully with what had already been done. I mean, it changed what we were doing, but in a really great way. It sort of like gave it a new power, almost. This is the Mimi Van Osen, yeah. Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I don't want to give too much away. That was awesome. So again, in this piece, what we sort of, not what we struggled with, but what we worked on finding was this balance between a kind of like very active ballet dancer approach to movement, which is full and you can move and do whatever you want within the realms of the steps that you're doing. There's actually a lot of freedom, even though our steps are codified, whereas Feng Yi wanted a very active body, but she only wanted you to be in this position. But she kept saying, I can tell your arm, like to do the position. She would be able to tell if she could move your arm because it wasn't active, or she could tell if you were facing the back of the stage that your eyes weren't open. She went, Lane, I can tell your eyes aren't open even though you're facing the back. So it was this sort of like finding the middle ground of being active and flailing or being like really within the parameters and staying alive. Can you speak about that a tiny bit?
Yeah, especially for me. I feel like she was constantly telling me that I wasn't like not enough energy in the shape, or just always she'd be like, I'm not like, are you marking? And I would be like, no, I'm not. And always she would always be like, oh, I know, like Gina, like you need to, when she's gonna do it like full, like you're gonna do it full out, right? And I was like, no, I mean, well, yeah, I'm gonna do it full out, but I think I am right now, I don't know. But yeah, she was so specific and she could just always tell, no matter what.
And also, I think for ballet, like what Tyler was saying, for dancers, when we do an arabesque, it's like they always say, you're reaching for something, you're reaching for diamonds or ice cream or something. So there's this idea of like, to show that we're really working hard is because we're trying the most we can. But for all these positions with Feng Yi, there's all this stuff where we're sort of going to each other, and she didn't want an extended elbow because she's like, actually, that's all the further it can go. There's no power there. But if you like slightly bend it, I guess it shows that there's still possibility left, and it shows more power to you, even though to us it feels like we have a bent arm, and this feels more powerful.
It's an interesting position. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. So I'd like to invite Misa and Patrick onto the stage. Thank you. Both wonderful dancers with the Boston Ballet. And there's a really delightful man by the name of Yorma Elo who has worked extensively with Boston and done ballets with the New York City Ballet, who's really just he's like the nicest guy. And he, earlier on in this year, was back at City Ballet rehearsing a ballet that he did called Slice to Sharp. And I had already had Patrick and Misa coming to the festival, and you had mentioned that he had done something. He had sort of fashioned a pas de deux out of a larger ballet for you and Patrick. Did you do it together before? Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, you're the new guy. Well, we're happy to have you. That was done one time in like Norway or something, like Finland. I'm sorry. Oh, you did that together. So I see. And I was very happy to have his work on the program because he came to choreography extremely late. I think that he was like 40 or something when he started doing, because he had been in ballet school with Miko, but I don't think that he had started to do dances or to become interested in that stuff until, before he started to do anything, which is sort of interesting. I feel like people tend to start earlier. But I think because of that, he's got a really interesting movement style, different than other people that you like, different than Justin for sure, very different from Bill Forsyth. Is like Bill's stuff is round and long, and Yorma's kind of like moves, in like planes of the body kind of way. Can you talk about his style a little bit? You're doing all the things.
Okay, well, to get an idea about Yorma's work, I would suggest you Google a picture of him. He's all angles. He's kind of built like a square, and he's got a very sort of boxy head, and he always wears these iconic rectangular glasses all the time. I've never seen him without them. So yeah, he's got a very angular shape, and he really likes very direct movement, very energetic, high-powered movement. What's nice about Bachcello, though, is when did he first make it? 2013? No, 2015? Something like that. But it was after many, many ballets that he'd made for Boston Ballet. So this one actually has a hint of more romanticism in it. It's softer. There is a lot of his iconic movement, very angular and mysterious. But this one has some tenderness to it, which is one of the excerpts we're doing. The Sarabande has a lot of those qualities, which is nice to see because it means he's branching out and he's exploring his own feelings.
I mean, it's also interesting that the Sarabande is what we think of now as a like calm, lovely, lilting dance, because actually I was reading earlier today that the Sarabande was imported from the New World. I mean, this is something that came from like Mexico when it was a Spanish colony, and then it was taken by the Italians, and it was like a sexy dance, and then the meter changed, and it was taken by the French, and it became a little more somber and more of a court dance, and that's sort of what we know in the style now. When Bach started to experiment with John, I'm sure you can talk about this. When Bach started experimenting with these dance forms for the classical suite, you have a dance background, right? I would like to show a little bit of the Sarabande. Do you know that part where he goes under the leg and she flips around? Do you know that arabesque? No, the flip. Right, the flip where you do this, because that's like very, to me, it looks like it when he's. My favorite bit. Is that in the Gigue or is that in the Sarabande? That's in the Gigue. Can we go from where? Do you know like what a mark would be for that?
We could go from like the beginning, but like the halfway through, like what we did before, like the other.
The Gigue.
Yeah.
I think that's what she means. Yeah. And just go light. But this is like a really beautiful example of the lines that we were talking about, and like the sort of the sharpness. Is this not right? No. Okay, can we pause? Sorry, John. So not the repeat. Okay, you know, okay, awesome. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I think that you can see here, that was great. Too much. We haven't really seen even any like rounded arms. Everything is like, from the first thing, everything is like a straight elbow. Everything is like straight legs, all of their positions. It wasn't really till we stopped at the end that we were seeing all of these rounded arms. So you can sort of like, you can get an idea of how he moves. Also, I feel like he moves sometimes like from the joints. You know what I mean? He's like moving, it's like his hips will go, he's very loose in the joints. Is it difficult for you? Sometimes I feel when I don't have like a full expression of the arm, I feel locked up. Neither of you look locked up when you're dancing, but did you have to sort of find your way with that?
Yeah, definitely. I'm like a softer dancer, so I was keep getting a correction, Misa, sharper, sharper and like stiffer kind of, yeah. And it's kind of hard because you don't get to be stiff as a dancer. So, yeah, I had to work on it a lot. I'm still struggling with it. It's hard, but.
Is it something? Did you feel almost like you were cramping in a way?
I just feel like I have to like lock up everything, like the whole torso, to be able to like be sharper. And then I don't get to do. But in the pas de deux, it's a little different. It's more free, and then this is one of his most classical work that he's done for Boston.
Which is sort of interesting too. Thank you very much for that excerpt. But it's interesting too that we see, because usually in the course of the music, the saraband would come first and then the gigue after. But in this way, he's switched it. So we see all of this like, the fast, sharp expression comes first in the ballet, and then we get the softness afterwards. And actually, it works really well. I mean, I was sort of wondering why you would switch it, because it doesn't really make like so much sense if you'd be listening to the whole thing to switch the two parts. But I think it's actually really nice in the course of this whole ballet. All right, thank you very much. The next thing on the program is actually, funnily enough, it was something that Fang Yishu commissioned from Christopher Wheeldon for Craig Hall, Wendy Whalen, and myself for performances that we did in Taipei. Craig, I don't even, how many years ago? 5 years ago. And I'm sure everyone in this audience has seen a pas de deux called Bitter Earth, This Bitter Earth. Wendy and I did it for her retirement. It's been done all over the place, and people sort of love it. And it is a wonderful pas de deux, but I kept thinking to myself, and Craig and I would talk all the time about how wonderful all of the rest of this ballet was that no one's ever seen. I mean, it was done twice for a Fall for Dance performance, and then we did it in Asia, but it hasn't been seen at all. So I thought, why not revisit this? I'd love to just talk about your pas de deux. No, is that okay? We have to leave some secret so they come back and see the show. We'll talk about increases. And so when I first approached you about it, and I asked Patricia if she'd be willing to learn something that was very different, obviously made for Fang Yi, who was a dancer with Martha Graham for years and had like a full-on contemporary upbringing. I mean, like there was never a ballet class until she was maybe 40 years old. And that was like a very different thing, but you were so willing to try this. What was the hardest thing about making that transition?
Well, I think one of the first things I said to you was like, I definitely want to try it, but I need to work with her. I didn't feel like it would be authentic enough if I didn't get the chance to have it be passed on from her. And you said, yeah, we'll make it happen. And so that was what motivated me, because my main concern was not wanting to look like a ballerina doing this kind of modern work, and she blew me away when I just saw the video. So I think the hardest thing for me, when you're used to working with a man and you're in your point shoes and you're in a tutu, let's say, a lot of times the girl has to relax so that the guy can do the movement for you, or you just give him a nice plie and he lifts you. And she was on my case about it being a 50-50 dynamic. So if there was some sort of resistance happening, I had to give Craig as much response as Craig was giving me. And that was so challenging. I was like, I see what you're doing. How do I make that happen with my body? So we had 2 amazing days with her, and she talked about that and so many other things about muscles in your face and how to...
Remember the eyebrows from the other ballets?
No eyebrows.
Like, yeah, she's really into, literally there's no detail that she wouldn't notice and remark upon.
It was incredible, and also it made me realize that the minute I don't put tension or energy in the eyebrows, how much more strength I'd have in my core or in my feet so I could really root into the ground. And instead of taking it up here, it was like, relax this and take it down. And so I wish I had more time with her. I want to go to Taiwan, right? She's in Taiwan. I want to just fly out and work with her forever. But I kept telling Craig, don't just tell me I'm okay. Tell me what I need to do to give you more. So that was a big challenge, but I love it.
I'd love to show, and then do you have something to say about her? I mean, because you worked with her a lot. But I'd love to show something like this, too. Unless you want to talk after.
Yeah, sure. I think that Patricia's done an excellent job stepping into the role. It's been 5 years since I performed it, so in a way I was coming at it almost as new as Patricia. There are things, that were in my body that I remembered, but I was discovering all the nuances alongside with Patricia. And we also I want it to be different from when I premiered it with Feng Yi, because she's a different person. We have a different partnership, a different energy, and so it doesn't make sense to mimic completely, to try to execute everything the way she would, but for us to discover how to conquer this pas de deux together as 2 brand new people. So I mean, it's great. And every day we're learning a little bit more and more, and it's a lot of fun.
How far into do you think that is? Yeah, the first. Do you want to just hear it from the beginning? It's so beautiful. Do you remember when Jared was saying earlier that ballet dancers, like in an arabesque, for instance, want to be like the entire way out? Nobody wants to be down. We all wanted to reach our arms, and we didn't want this. It's very similar in this part that I'm talking about. Craig, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to hold me up. Oh, it's the other hand? All right, I'll hold this. So Pat kept... And I watched the first rehearsal and I loved it. She was going like this, and then she was pulling so far out because I'm a little bigger than she is. But she wanted to, like a ballet dancer, she wanted to get the longest line to make it look what she thought the most effective. And Feng Yi looked at her and she said, no, go here. She said, the leg goes out and your weight, you stay. She was like, the weight is right in the center with both of you. Can you show that? Can you maybe sort of like do what you were doing before? Did you see how far out she's going? And then they would be doing this huge swing around as opposed to stepping and keeping the weight in. And it builds this beautiful tension. When she's going out, the line of the eye goes with the leg. The arms straighten, and we lose the crux. And that's where the power is. That when you do it the second time, it's like you can tell that both bodies, both arms, and all of your focus is in this center point. You did it really well yesterday, too. So that was... I don't want to show any more because I want people to be surprised about the other things. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, that was beautiful. That's been sort of like, I didn't think about this when I was putting together the program, but these sort of little details, like what we were exploring last night in Wednesday's talk at the library, and what we're talking about now with just the hand or the eyebrows. When you have a group of artists that are sort of so tuned in and working with people who are actually, alive and around still, you can work on shading movements and ballets in a way that you can't do with something that's old. You can't do if you can't go back to the original source. You can have an amazing conversation, creative, alive conversation with people, which is really wonderful. And now, along that same vein, we're going to talk about increases. So if I could have the cast of increases come out onto the stage. Welcome back. Is Justin here? No, he's taking a break. Oh, he's at the Whaling Museum. It's amazing. I want to go from the beginning up and like really lightly. We want to see patterns, and we want to see, occasionally I'll use this lecture to just get like a few more minutes of rehearsal because we might need it. I'm not going to admit to needing more rehearsal, but we might. So like just patterns, and I want to go up to where like the first time that Craig is doing this and pulling everybody back. One thing that struck me about Justin's work at the beginning was his idea of symmetry and structure and sort of like kaleidoscope movements. Like he plays with, symmetry and structure in very interesting ways. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he will take something that seems to be sort of like crystalline in its nature and like cut right through it. Almost like you're seeing some like beautiful, fully constructed picture that you're like, oh God, it's finished. And then he's just like crashing right through it. And then somehow it reforms and he's crashing through it again. So if we can just sort of like really, really lightly, because we're going to do this later on for the dress rehearsal, but we just want to sort of like, show patterns and things whenever you're ready. Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Jeff. So thank you, dancers. That was great. Could anyone have counted how many iterations of the very first position that we saw? Was anyone keeping track? No, but I'm sure you noticed that when can we go to the first one? Everyone's out of breath. I was like, please mark it. And everybody was like, it's so much fun. Okay, so we're here. And then we go for a little bit. Cha, 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 cha. 2. Oh, so this is what I'm talking about, structure and symmetry. So we've started with an idea of 4 people together, and then they've broken, and now we have 4 people together, and you could possibly, conceivably have like another two. It's almost like this picture, like a kaleidoscope, had widened up to the point where we don't see them, and then they come back together. And now this is the crash that I'm talking about. This is Giovanni, and this was your correction from yesterday. You don't have to do it now. But Justin said he really needed him to fly through almost like he was going to hit the last person in this line. But you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. Right, so they're breaking only when he's coming through. And then, for the third time, we see this same idea of symmetry. This is the same thing as the first position, but it's with 3 people in each group. We're seeing it again. Do you see? I mean, but it happens in such quick succession that you don't really know what's going on. It literally is like looking in one of those things and just going round and round and round and round. Do we want to do... Let's do that again. Not that we talked about it. Let's do it again. What? Oh, slower. Craig made a request for it to be slower. Thank you. This is the crash. Second iteration. Third. Crash again. Fourth time. This is sort of his like transition bridge, and now we get like the first kind of like new idea that he's experimenting with. Great, thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. That's tight now. That's really good. So you can see that we've started with like a really, really highly wrought and well thought out structure for the beginning that basically repeats twice. We have the first time with Giovanni coming through, the second time with Lane coming through. We have like the 4th iteration of this kaleidoscope feature, which now features everybody all in one circle. So we went from 2 circles with 4 to 2 circles with 3, back to something else, and then we have all of a sudden everybody with 4 people, which is sort of the start of his bridge. And then we have one transition period with Sarah kind of like kicking everybody in the face. And then we move to a brand new thought. In the music, is that the first time that we're hearing, or is that, do you know that line where Craig's walking? What's that mark? Airplane? Is that a repeat, or is that, it's a new part? Is that the first time that that's coming in? Yeah. I'm drawn to the structure of this. It's beautifully done, and it's so tightly woven that I think it's really impressive. Does anyone, Craig, you work with him quite a bit at the New York City Ballet. Is he like sketching in notebooks? I know he does a lot of work in the studio, because when he's made things here before, he's like a lot of time with himself working out the steps, but like, is he highly visual and geometric? I'm just like picturing.
He does have a notebook with sketches, and it's just the structure, but obviously once he comes in, he has the idea, and it's almost like the dancers. He adds water, and he sees what happens, and then it changes, it morphs. So I think sometimes what he has on his paper and what happens on stage, there's a line that goes through that's, I have the idea, and it's exactly that way towards the end, but a lot of times it depends on the energy of the dancers and what, maybe a mistake that someone did turned it upside down. So with this, I actually did work with him when he created it, but I know that he does have lots of notebooks with lots of dots and different colors and arrows, and it's his own language. It's almost like an equation. You see him look, and I can't understand it until I see it out there, and he fills me in a little bit, but I think that once you go into the studio, that's when it all comes to life.
Well, thank you very much. That was beautiful, twice. Thank you. The last thing on the program, if I could have the lovely Boston Ballet cast of William Forsythe's Vertiginous Thrill of Exactitude. This is an astounding ballet, and in a nice way, and again, this was not planned, I wish I could say that, I think that Bill has been a huge influence on Justin's work. Just structurally, no one really moves people around in a space like he does. There's something about it that's like really astounding, the way that people can go in and out and turn around and come back. It always surprises me, and I've seen this ballet many times, and I think it's very surprising. I would like to show, and I'm not going to be able to describe it well, so I'm going to do it without you hearing. Because I think if you take a look, again, at the structure of this, which is so beautiful. I mean, when you're watching this ballet, you can really see that Bill just he loves ballet. He loves ballet steps. He loves the whole thing, because it's like everything has been I don't know, he's like a grocer that would polish every single piece of fruit or vegetable in his shop. I mean, it's the most gorgeous stuff because it's so simple. I mean, really, in essence, when you look at it all, it's all very, very simple. Then he's taken it and making it and made it. It's like put it on a t-shirt, and made it exquisite, you know? So we're going to go from the beginning. Again, very light. This ballet is an absolute killer. And poor things, when I first asked them to do it, I told them that it was going to be first on the program, and then I made it last. It's not ever easier just to market, you know? I'm sorry, it's terrible. But I don't know if you were catching in a way also what was happening, this very, very tight structure. And I think it's super necessary, especially when dealing with music like this, which is really, really tight. You have strings and timpanis and horns that you have to be careful with who is doing what and when. And so I think for me, when I'm watching this, it's as though everybody's breaking up, and at the point where my eye meets its threshold, then I see unison. It's at the point where I literally cannot see another step on the stage, then all of a sudden the girls are going together, and I'm like, ah. It's it gives you exactly what you need. Can you just show them again, because it's so good, 8 counts just before you've come into the diagonal, which we have some little unison bits, and then everybody breaks off on their own, and so beautifully with this chord, everybody comes together. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Everybody's off on their own. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1. I mean, it's so good. We're seeing the everybody together in the beginning, and then slowly they start breaking off their own, and they start making their own patterns around, because people don't even have the same patterns to get into the spots. He also has a very, very specific style of moving, and I believe that he even rehearsed you all a little bit in Boston. Such a lovely man. I don't know if it's always a killer to be in the studio with him, but he had a shoulder accident. We were actually originally going to do something new of his for the festival this year, to several songs, and then he had a terrible accident for his shoulder and was not able to do that. So through some correspondence, we ended up with this wonderful piece for the program. And he kindly, while doing PT in Boston, said, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll go up and rehearse the troops." Would anybody who wants to grab the mic and talk about Kathleen?
His work is very interesting in that it's always to the extreme. Nothing is ever, as you were talking earlier, it's always further. And he talks about 9 points, where if you stand in front of you, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's all these different things, and that could form a box around you. So you could reach at this point and that point, or sideways, and you're always going, your body's always being pulled in opposite directions. So you're never just going front, you're always going front and back. So your momentum is always in 2 directions. So applying that to your dancing kind of makes this full body experience where it's never easy, but it's really fulfilling. So it's really just an honor to work with him in that way, because he opens you. Yeah.
Can you do at the 2 point when you do that attitude, because you do one, right? And yeah, it's like she does this step that's amazing. Right. So she's going forward, and then she has this whole solo, which the entire thing is all moving in so many different directions, where like a normal attitude would be just attitude straight, like Don Q, and yet you can find a shape, so many different shapes when you're doing this. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted you to show you that, or to show the audience that. Would anybody else like to describe? Your solo has a fair bit of like...
thing of like kind of the progression of ballet. You know, you have like the older Vaganova arabesque, which is a little bit more understated, and then Balanchine came, and then you have like reaching further, and then Forsyth went even further and said that I want it to be like the biggest and longest thing that you ever could. So anytime you do his ballet, and then like you do his ballets and you think you can like rest, but you physically can't, because everything is so far away from you that literally when we just marked that beginning section, I'm already tired right now, and I didn't even do it full out. So it's like an amazing experience, because you always feel super rewarded every single time you do one of his ballets, because you're not just like resting or kind of like wasting your artistic time. You're shouting your artistic voice to the mountaintop. So it's really awesome. Yeah. Says, like, what are you saving it for? Yeah, there's no saving it ever. No. Yeah.
Like Kathleen said, he's always like, what are you saving it for? And it's true. And actually, when you're dancing this, it looks like you're going for broke. So they're also hysterical. I'm not going to make you do any more, because we're going to run it in like an hour or something. So thank you very much for showing that. There is also, it ends sort of with like a hysterical ballet joke. It's, and I'm not going to tell you what it is, but after they've done this incredibly difficult and crazy thing, it finishes on a very, very old school note, with a combination of steps that you would have seen at this festival before in something called Flower Festival from Gonzano. Musicians, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. We're so happy to have the live music. And thank you to the dancers. Do we have to wrap up, or can we take a... Yeah, I think we can take a few questions if anybody has something. I mean, I always end up... I could talk about so many things, and I try to keep it focused, and I look down and I'm still thinking, oh, I talked too much. But if anybody has questions, please raise your hand and we'll run around and... Yes.
You said like he uses a sketchbook.
Justin.
Justin.
Yes.
Does he use ballet notation? Does anybody use that anymore now that you can really put things on film a lot?
Alexei Ratmansky uses it, not so much for his own work. I mean, he does do a fair bit of notation, but he and his wife learned to use it while they were reconstructing the old Petipa pieces. So if you've seen The Sleeping Beauty at the American Ballet Theater, he used that notation from the old Imperial archives to restage that work, which essentially had been lost because no one could read it anymore. Generally, choreographers like Justin, like Bill, it's notebooks and videos anymore. Yeah, because the notation thing is very difficult, and there are very few people. It's sort of cumbersome, and there are relatively few people who know how to read it. So it's almost like if you took a bunch of notes like that and made an amazing ballet like Vertiginous, and then all of a sudden no one could use it to stage, so it would sort of be like a lost endeavor, so to speak.
Okay. Can I ask one more question about Wendy Whalen?
Sure.
Years ago, I saw her do, was it called Sonam?
La Sonnambula,
La Sonnambula.
yes.
And I've seen other people do it, but you were talking a little bit last night about, various ways the body moves. I've never seen anybody do it like that. I mean, she literally seemed to be floating around the stage, and I've never seen anybody else that can touch it.
Right.
Is there, other than the fact that she's just brilliant, is there something you could talk about that would,
definitely. One thing comes to mind, and it's funny because we were just talking about Alexei, and he would agree with me, because we've talked a lot before about like the length that Wendy has from the knee to the ankle bone. Like her shin, ankle, and top of the foot, there are maybe 0 people in the world that have the organization of bones and just the work that she put in, that when she's up on point doing bourrées, I agree with you, and he would agree with you as well, that there is such length and such height to her releve that she can literally move the center point of her body first, and then the feet are catching up. Whereas other people, it looks like they're using their feet to move. It looks like she is moving, and I'm not going to try to bourrée for you. I don't even know why I'm doing that. But she can move from her torso, and then the feet, it's almost like they're on clouds. And I think that has something to do with, obviously her technique on point, but I think the other thing too is the actual organization of ankle, bone, and knee.
Great, thank you. This is really a pleasure. Thank you.
Any others? Yes.
Why don't you have scores in front of you? Wouldn't that make this easier?
I think that was plenty loud.
What do you think this is? So in fact, yes. I don't have a full score of the Schubert, and we're also using a recording because it would be impossible to have that many musicians here. And yes, whenever and I'm not a ballet master, I don't work in that regard, but when I come here for this festival, if there's a job that needs doing, I put on that hat and I go do it. And so sometimes that means being a ballet master for a new piece. And the first thing I did, and Rachel, the composer, was kind enough to send me my own songbook. And that's what I did. I sat down, and all of my notes for the ballet are tied to that page. It is easier for me because I studied music from when I was a child, so I can read what's going on, and I can sort of, I see what's on the page, I can hear it in my head, and then we can go from there. But it has been sort of like my goal at City Ballet and here to increase the amount that we talk with our colleagues on the other side or in the pit, because I think it just enhances a performance, it enhances a performer's ability to relate to the music and to interpret on stage. If you know what's happening technically in the orchestra pit, you're not going to be taken by surprise, and you can really listen. So yes, I had a score all along. Any last questions? If not, I think we'll wrap up and get on with our dress rehearsal. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you.